Inside the vibrant confines of the Amazing Digital Circus, the characters went about their routine adventures, guided by the whimsical plans of Kane, the ringmaster AI. As they returned from their latest escapade, Gangle, her comedy mask adorned, approached Kinger nervously. "Gangle, what's on your mind?" Kinger asked, his floating hands hovering anxiously. Gangle fidgeted with her ribbon-like fingers, her theater mask showing a hint of distress. "Kinger, I need to tell you something. It's important." Kinger's denture head turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" Taking a deep breath, Gangle blurted out, "I'm pregnant, and you're the father." Kinger's eyes widened in shock, his entire body tensing up. "Pregnant? With my child?" He stammered, his voice trembling. Gangle nodded, her ribbon body swaying slightly. "Yes, Kinger, I didn't plan for this, but it happened." A wave of panic washed over Kinger as he struggled to comprehend the news. "But I'm not ready to be a father. I can't handle this," he exclaimed, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Gangle reached out to comfort him, but he recoiled, his panic escalating into a full-blown attack. He stumbled backward, grasping at his kingly robe, his mind overwhelmed by the sudden weight of responsibility. Ragatha, noticing the commotion, hurried over to intervene. "Kinger, calm down. We're here for you," she said soothingly, her yarn hair swaying with each step. But Kinger couldn't hear her words over the roar of his own thoughts. He collapsed to the ground, his breathing erratic, as the realization of impending fatherhood crashed over him like a tidal wave. Meanwhile, Pomni watched from a distance, her heart aching for her troubled friend. She whispered a silent prayer to find a solution, knowing that in the twisted realm of the digital circus, there were no easy answers. As Kinger lay on the ground, gasping for breath and grappling with his panic, the other inhabitants of the Amazing Digital Circus gathered around, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. "But how is this possible?" Zubul grumbled, their mismatched limbs twitching with agitation. "We were told there's no way out of this place, let alone having kids." Ragatha bit her lip, her usually cheerful demeanor clouded with uncertainty. "I don't understand it either, but Gangle wouldn't lie about something like this." Jack scratched his head, his long rabbit ears twitching in confusion. "This is messed up, man. I mean, how does one even have kids in a digital circus?" Pomni, her nerves frayed with worry, wrung her hands together nervously. I don't know, but we have to figure it out. Gangle needs our support." Kane, the enigmatic AI ringmaster, appeared in a puff of digital smoke, his denture head clicking in amusement. Well, it seems we have a mystery on our hands, my dear circus performers." Bubble, his AI companion, floated beside him, emitting a series of bubbly giggles. "Ooh, a mystery! How exciting!" Ignoring Bubble's antics, Kane fixed his gaze on Gangle, his expression unreadable. "Tell me, Gangle, do you have any idea how this came to be?" Gangle shook her head, her theater mask showing a mix of sadness and confusion. I don't know, Kane. It's as much a mystery to me as it is to everyone else." Kane stroked his chin thoughtfully, his magical cane twirling in his hand. "Very well, then. It seems we have a puzzle to solve. But fear not, my dear performers, for I shall do everything in my power to uncover the truth." With that, Kane disappeared in another puff of smoke, leaving the circus performers to ponder the inexplicable phenomenon of Gangle's pregnancy. As they exchanged puzzled glances, the realization sank in that their reality was far stranger and more unpredictable than they could have ever imagined. As the characters mulled over the mystery of Gangle's pregnancy, Kane reappeared with a flourish, his denture head clicking with excitement. "Ah, my dear performers, it seems the mystery has been unraveled," Kane announced, his magical cane shimmering with newfound knowledge. All eyes turned to him, a mixture of anticipation and dread swirling in the air. "What did you find, Kane?" Pomni asked, her voice trembling with apprehension. Kane cleared his throat, his dentures clacking together in a semblance of a smile. "Well, you see, it appears that my security cameras caught Gangle and Kinger engaged in, shall we say, some rather intimate activities in Kinger's pillow fort." Gasps of shock and disbelief rippled through the group as they processed Kane's revelation. "Inappropriate activities?" Ragatha echoed, her yarn hair standing on end. "What do you mean, Kane?" Kane waved his hand dismissively, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Oh, you know, just a little pillow talk, if you catch my drift. But fear not, my dear performers, I shall spare you the sordid details." Gangle's tragedy mask cracked, revealing a look of horror and embarrassment underneath. I'm so sorry, everyone. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Kinger, his kingly robe ruffled with shame, floated awkwardly beside her, his cartoon hands clenching and unclenching with agitation. Zubal's grumpy facade softened slightly as they glanced between Gangle and Kinger. Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we've got ourselves a little love story in the circus. Jax, ever the troublemaker, grinned mischievously. Heh, who would have thought? Kinger, the insect enthusiast, getting busy in his pillow fort. Despite the awkwardness of the situation, the circus performers couldn't help but chuckle at Jax's remark, the tension easing ever so slightly. Kane, sensing the shift in mood, clapped his hands together gleefully. Well, my dear performers, it seems we have a cause for celebration. Love, it appears, knows no bounds, even within the confines of the Amazing Digital Circus. And with that, the characters shared a moment of camaraderie, united by the unexpected twists and turns of their digital existence, and the enduring power of love in the most unlikely of places. As the circus performers processed the revelation of Gangle and Kinger's intimate escapade, Kane's voice rang out once more, cutting through the air with a flourish. But wait, my dear performers, there's more to this tale, Kane exclaimed, his denture head bobbing with excitement. The characters turned their attention back to Kane, their curiosity piqued by his cryptic words. What do you mean, Kane? Pomni asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Kane grinned, his magical cane twirling in his hand. Why, it seems that the unborn child, the fruit of Gangle and Kinger's love, is a girl. Gasps of surprise filled the air as the performers exchanged bewildered glances, trying to comprehend the implications of Kane's revelation. A girl? Ragatha echoed, her yarn hair swaying with astonishment. But how is that possible? Kane shrugged nonchalantly, his dentures clacking together in a semblance of a smile. Ah, my dear Ragatha, such is the magic of the digital circus. Anything is possible within these confines. Gangle's ribbon-like form quivered with emotion as she clutched her abdomen, a swell of maternal instinct flooding her being. A girl, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I can't believe it. Kinger, his kingly robe fluttering with pride, floated beside her, his cartoon hands trembling with excitement. A daughter, he murmured, his voice filled with wonder. I never imagined. Gangle turned to Kinger, her theater mask showing a rare glimpse of joy. We should name her Porcelana, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. It's a name I've always loved. Kinger nodded, his floating hands reaching out to gently caress Gangle's ribbon-like form. Porcelana, he repeated, the name rolling off his tongue with a sense of reverence. It's perfect. And so, amidst the surreal backdrop of the Amazing Digital Circus, Gangle and Kinger found themselves embarking on a new chapter of their digital existence, united by love and the promise of a future filled with hope, laughter, and the boundless possibilities of parenthood. With the decision made to welcome their daughter, Porcelana, into the world, Gangle and Kinger set about preparing for her arrival within the confines of the Amazing Digital Circus. Gangle's ribbon-like form fluttered with excitement as she and Kinger floated hand in hand through the digital landscape, their hearts brimming with anticipation. We need to create a nursery for Porcelana, Gangle suggested, her theater mask glowing with joy. Somewhere warm and cozy where she can feel safe and loved. Kinger nodded, his floating hands gesturing with determination. I'll use my skills to fashion a crib fit for a princess, he declared, his voice filled with pride. Together, they ventured through the circus tents, gathering materials and ideas for their daughter's sanctuary. Pomni offered colorful fabric scraps to decorate the walls, while Ragatha contributed soft pillows and blankets to line the crib. Jax, ever the mischief maker, snuck in a toy chest filled with trinkets and treasures, eager to entertain the little princess with his antics. Zubal grumbled about the whole affair, but begrudgingly offered a sturdy wooden rocking chair for Gangle to nurse Porcelana. As they worked tirelessly to prepare the nursery, the bond between Gangle and Kinger grew stronger with each passing moment, their shared love for their unborn daughter fueling their determination to create a haven of happiness and warmth. Finally, after days of labor and love, the nursery was complete, a testament to Gangle and Kinger's devotion to their little princess. Gangle gazed around the room, her theater mask aglow with pride. It's perfect, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Kinger wrapped his floating hands around her, pulling her close. "Our little Porcelana will have the best start in life," he murmured, his voice filled with tenderness. And as they stood together, basking in the warmth of their love and the promise of a future filled with endless possibilities, Gangle and Kinger knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead in the digital circus, they would face them together, united by the unbreakable bond of family. As the days passed and the anticipation of Porcelana's arrival grew, Gangle began to feel the telltale signs of labor coursing through her ribbon-like form. Panic gripped her heart as she realized that the moment she had been waiting for was finally upon her. She clutched her abdomen, her theater mask twisting with fear. "Kay Kinger," she stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "It's time. Porcelana is coming." Kinger, his kingly robe fluttering with concern, rushed to her side, his floating hands trembling with worry. "Don't worry, Gangle," he murmured, his voice soothing. "I'm here for you. We'll get through this together." Gangle nodded, her ribbon-like form quivering with pain as the contractions intensified. With Kinger's help, she made her way to the nursery, where the soft glow of the digital landscape bathed the room in a warm, comforting light. As Gangle lay down on the makeshift bed, her theater mask contorted with agony, Kinger knelt beside her, his floating hands grasping hers tightly. "You're doing great, Gangle," he whispered, his voice filled with love and admiration. "Just breathe and focus on bringing our little princess into the world." With each passing moment, the intensity of Gangle's pain grew, her cries echoing through the circus tents as she fought to bring Porcelana into the world. But just when it seemed that the pain would overwhelm her, Kinger's steady presence by her side provided her with the strength she needed to persevere. And then, finally, after what felt like an eternity, Gangle's cries of pain were replaced by the soft cries of a newborn baby. Kinger's eyes filled with tears of joy as he cradled Porcelana in his floating hands, her tiny form a precious miracle in the midst of the digital circus. Gangle, her theater mask now adorned with a radiant smile, reached out to caress her daughter's face, her heart overflowing with love and gratitude. "We did it, Kinger," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "We brought Porcelana into the world." And as they basked in the glow of their daughter's arrival, Gangle and Kinger knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, united by the unbreakable bond of family. With baby Porcelana cradled in Kinger's floating hands, the other characters of the Amazing Digital Circus gathered around, their hearts filled with excitement and wonder. Pomni, her nervous demeanor momentarily forgotten, approached the newborn with cautious curiosity. "She's so tiny," she whispered, her eyes wide with awe. Ragatha, her yarn hair swaying gently, smiled warmly at the sight of the newborn. "Welcome to the circus, little one," she cooed, her voice soft and tender. Jax, ever the troublemaker, couldn't resist sneaking a peek at the baby. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" he exclaimed, his mischievous grin softened by a hint of affection. "Looks like we've got ourselves a new addition to the circus." Zubul, their grumpy demeanor momentarily forgotten, approached Porcelana with a grudging smile. "She's not so bad," they muttered, their voice surprisingly gentle. "Welcome to the madness, kid." As the characters took turns admiring the newborn, Gangle and Kinger beamed with pride, their hearts overflowing with love for their daughter. "She's perfect," Gangle whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Kinger nodded, his floating hands gently rocking Porcelana back and forth. "Our little princess," he murmured, his voice filled with tenderness. And as the circus performers welcomed Porcelana into their midst, they knew that their digital family had grown stronger with her arrival, bound together by love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship. Under the cover of darkness, while Kinger and Gangle slept soundly in their quarters, Jax, the mischievous rabbit, hatched a plan to introduce baby Porcelana to the art of pranking. With a sly grin on his face, Jax carefully scooped up the newborn from her crib, cradling her in his arms as he crept through the circus tents. "Time for a little midnight mischief, little one," Jax whispered to Porcelana, his voice filled with excitement. Porcelana, her eyes wide with curiosity, gurgled happily in response, seemingly eager to join in on the fun. As they approached Ragatha's quarters, Jax couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of the prank he had in store. Knowing Regatha's fear of centipedes all too well, Jax carefully placed a few lifelike replicas on her bed, his grin widening as he imagined her reaction. "Now watch closely, Porcelana," Jax whispered, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "This is how you pull off a classic prank." Porcelana, her tiny hands grasping at the air, watched with rapt attention as Jax arranged the centipedes on Regatha's bed, her giggles echoing softly through the night. As Regatha slept soundly, unaware of the impending prank, Jax stepped back to admire his handiwork, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. "Okay, little one, now we wait," Jax whispered, his heart pounding with anticipation. Sure enough, moments later, Regatha stirred in her sleep, her eyes fluttering open as she felt something crawling across her sheets. With a startled cry, she leaped out of bed, her heart racing with fear as she frantically brushed the centipedes away. As Regatha's cries filled the air, Porcelana erupted into a fit of giggles, her laughter mingling with the chaos of the prank. Jax grinned, his heart swelling with pride at the sight of Porcelana's joy. "Looks like we make quite the team, little one," he whispered, his voice filled with pride. And as they reveled in the aftermath of their midnight mischief, Jax couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement for the adventures that lay ahead with his newest partner in crime by his side. Startled awake by Regatha's screams of terror, Gangle and Kinger shot out of bed, their hearts pounding with fear. Rushing to Regatha's quarters, they found Jax standing there, holding Porcelana in his arms. "What's going on?" Gangle exclaimed, her voice trembling with panic as she reached out for her daughter. Kinger's eyes widened with alarm as he took in the scene before him. "Jax, what are you doing with our baby?" he demanded, his voice quivering with anger. Jax rolled his eyes, his patience wearing thin. "Relax, it's just a little harmless fun," he muttered, his tone dismissive. But Gangle and Kinger were not reassured. Clutching Porcelana tightly to her chest, Gangle shot Jax a glare of pure fury. "Fun, this is not a game, Jax. Porcelana is our daughter, not your plaything." Kinger nodded in agreement, his kingly robe bristling with indignation. "Give us back our baby, Jax. Now." Jax huffed in annoyance, but begrudgingly handed Porcelana back to her parents. "Fine, take her," he muttered, his irritation palpable. As Gangle and Kinger cradled their daughter in their arms, they shared a silent moment of relief, grateful to have her back safe and sound. "Let's go back to the nursery, Gangle," Kinger whispered, his voice soft with reassurance. "Porcelana needs to be where she belongs." Gangle nodded, her heart still racing with fear. "Agreed," she murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. With Porcelana safely back in their arms, Gangle and Kinger made their way back to the nursery, their minds reeling from the ordeal. As they settled Porcelana back into her crib, they vowed to always protect her from harm, no matter the cost. And as they watched their daughter sleep peacefully, surrounded by the warmth and safety of her nursery, Gangle and Kinger knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead in the amazing digital circus, they would face them together, united by their love for each other and their precious daughter. 12 years had flown by within the confines of the amazing digital circus, and Porcelana, or Porcey as she preferred to be called, had blossomed into a spirited and rebellious young girl. With each passing day, Porcey grew more distant from her parents, Kinger and Gangle, whom she found to be overly strict and annoying. Instead, she gravitated towards Jax, her partner in crime and fellow mischief maker, who shared her love for pranks and adventure. Together, Porcey and Jax formed a formidable duo, their antics causing chaos and laughter throughout the circus tents. From sneaking into Kane's control room to rearranging Bubbles' bubbles, there was no prank too daring for the dynamic pair. But as Porcey's rebellious streak grew stronger, Kinger and Gangle couldn't help but worry for their daughter's safety. They watched with aching hearts as Porcey distanced herself from them, her once bright and joyful spirit overshadowed by defiance and recklessness. "We have to do something," Gangle, Kinger murmured, his voice filled with concern as he watched Porcey and Jax disappear into the shadows of the circus tents. Gangle nodded, her theater mask contorted with worry. "I know, Kinger, but how do we reach her? She's so headstrong and stubborn." As they pondered the best course of action, a sense of helplessness washed over them, their hearts heavy with the weight of their daughter's rebellion. But deep down, Kinger and Gangle knew that no matter the challenges that lay ahead, they would never give up on their daughter. For beneath Porcey's bratty exterior lay a heart filled with love and potential, waiting to be discovered and nurtured. And as they braced themselves for the trials that awaited them, Kinger and Gangle vowed to never lose hope in their daughter's ability to find her way back to them. Under the cover of darkness, Porcey, fueled by a rebellious spirit and a longing for adventure, slipped out of her room and made her way through the circus tents to meet up with her partner in prank, Jax. With each step she took, her heart pounded with excitement, the thrill of breaking the rules coursing through her veins. She couldn't wait to see what mischief awaited her tonight. As she reached Jax's quarters, she knocked lightly on the door, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. Jax, ever the prankster, answered the door with a wide grin. Well, 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 look who decided to join the party, he exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Porcey laughed, her spirits lifted by the sight of her friend. You know I can't resist a good prank, Jax, she replied, her voice tinged with excitement. Together, they ventured out into the night, their laughter echoing through the empty circus tents as they plotted their next adventure. But as they roamed the digital landscape, Porcey couldn't shake the nagging feeling of guilt that gnawed at her conscience. Deep down, she knew that her parents would be worried sick if they knew she was out past curfew. But for now, she pushed aside her doubts and embraced the thrill of the moment, knowing that with Jax by her side, anything was possible. And as they disappeared into the darkness of the night, Porcey and Jax vowed to make the most of their time together, united by their love for pranks and the unbreakable bond of friendship. As Porcey and Jax crouched in the shadows, their prank on Pomni ready to unfold, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, mingling with the thrill of mischief and the weight of their actions. As Pomni stirred in her room, her presence a constant reminder of the fragile state of their existence within the digital circus. Porcey's heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and unease. Are you ready, Porcey? Jax whispered, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Porcey nodded, her stomach churning with uncertainty. Let's do this, she replied, her voice wavering slightly. Together, they activated the fake exit door they had set up, their hearts pounding with anticipation as they waited for Pomni's reaction. As Pomni's eyes flickered open, a glimmer of hope shone through the madness that threatened to consume her. With a sense of desperation, she stumbled toward the door, her hands trembling with anticipation. But as she reached for the handle, her hopes were dashed as the door swung open to reveal nothing but a blank void, a cruel reminder of the impossibility of escape within the digital circus. A strangled cry escaped Pomni's lips as the realization set in, her mind teetering on the edge of sanity as the weight of her despair bore down upon her. Jax, unable to contain his amusement, burst into laughter, his giggles echoing through the silent night as he reveled in the chaos he had wrought. But Porcey, her heart heavy with guilt, watched in horror as Pomni's laughter turned to manic hysteria, her eyes ablaze with madness as she began to abstract before their very eyes. A chill ran down Porcey's spine as she realized the gravity of their actions, the consequences of their prank unfolding before her in horrifying clarity. As Pomni's form twisted and contorted, her body morphing into a monstrous abstraction of her former self, Porcey's blood ran cold with fear and remorse. For in that moment, she knew that their reckless actions had brought about a tragedy beyond their comprehension, forever altering the fragile balance of the digital circus and shattering the illusion of safety within its confines. And as the reality of their actions sank in, Porcey could only watch in silent horror, her heart heavy with the weight of her guilt. As the horrifying events unfolded before their eyes, Ragatha, Pomni's closest friend, rushed to her side in a desperate attempt to save her from the monstrous abstraction that had consumed her. Tears streamed down Ragatha's yarn hair as she reached out to Pomni, her heart breaking at the sight of her dear friend lost to the madness of the digital circus. But before Ragatha could even utter a word, Pomni's abstracted form charged at her with terrifying speed, overwhelming her with its monstrous strength. With a cry of agony, Ragatha was thrown against the nearest wall, her ragdoll body crumpling against the impact as she began to glitch uncontrollably. "No!" Ragatha screamed, her voice filled with anguish as she struggled to fight against the glitching that threatened to consume her. Kane, the enigmatic ringmaster of the digital circus, appeared in a flash of digital smoke, his magical cane at the ready, as he assessed the chaos unfolding before him. With a swift and decisive motion, Kane aimed his cane at the floor, conjuring a black hole that swallowed up Pomni's abstracted form before sealing shut with finality. But even as the threat of abstraction was banished, Ragatha remained trapped in the grip of her own despair, her tears mingling with the glitching that continued to rack her fragile form. Kane turned his attention to Ragatha. His expression softened with sympathy as he aimed his cane at her, channeling the power of the digital circus to quell the glitching that threatened to consume her. As the glitching subsided and Ragatha's form stabilized, her eyes remained clouded with grief, her heart heavy with the loss of her beloved friend. Kane approached Ragatha with a gentle touch, his denture head clicking with sorrow as he offered her a comforting embrace. "Ragatha, my dear friend," he murmured, his voice filled with compassion. "I'm so sorry for your loss, but know that you are not alone. We will get through this together." And as Ragatha clung to Kane, her heart heavy with sorrow, she knew that even in the darkest moments of the digital circus, there would always be a glimmer of hope to guide them through the chaos and despair. As Porcey watched Kane and Ragatha with a heavy heart, consumed by guilt over the role she played in Pomni's tragic fate, Jax's callous laughter rang out like a bitter echo in the silence of the digital circus. "You're such a crybaby, Ragatha," Jax taunted, his voice dripping with disdain as he mocked her grief. But as Jax continued to make fun of Ragatha, Porcey's shame and remorse reached a boiling point, her heart aching with the weight of her actions. With tears stinging her eyes, Porcey turned on her heel and fled from the scene, her footsteps echoing through the empty circus tents as she sought solace in the solitude of the night. Meanwhile, Jax, too preoccupied with his own amusement to notice Porcey's departure, continued to revel in his cruel taunts, oblivious to the pain he had inflicted upon his friend. It wasn't until he finally glanced beside him, expecting to see Porcey's mischievous grin, that he realized she was gone. "Huh! Where'd she go?" Jax muttered to himself, furrowing his brow in confusion. But after a moment's hesitation, he shrugged off the thought, dismissing it as inconsequential in the face of his own amusement. With a careless laugh, Jax turned his attention back to Ragatha, ready to continue his reign of mockery without a second thought for the friend he had left behind in his wake of chaos. As Jax turned his attention back to Ragatha, a cruel smirk danced across his face, his eyes alight with mischief and malice. "Come on, Ragatha, stop blubbering like a baby," Jax jeered, his voice laced with contempt. "It's not like Pomni was anything special anyway." Ragatha's yarn hair quivered with indignation as she wiped away her tears, her ragdoll face contorted with sorrow and anger. "How can you say that, Jax?" she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Pomni was our friend. She deserved better than this." But Jax only laughed, the sound ringing out like a harsh echo in the silence of the circus tent. "Oh, spare me the dramatics, Ragatha," he sneered, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're just upset because you've lost your little sidekick." Ragatha's heart clenched with pain at Jax's callous words, her eyes brimming with tears once more. "Pomni was more than just a sidekick, Jax," she insisted, her voice shaking with grief. "She was a kind and gentle soul, and she deserved to be treated with respect." But Jax only rolled his eyes, his laughter growing louder with each passing moment. "Respect? Please, Ragatha, don't make me laugh," he scoffed, his tone filled with mockery. "In the digital circus, it's every man, woman, and abstraction for themselves. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you don't belong here." Ragatha's heart sank at Jax's cruel words, her resolve wavering in the face of his relentless taunts. But even as tears streamed down her ragdoll face, she knew that she could not let his callousness break her spirit. With a steely glint in her eye, Ragatha lifted her chin defiantly, her voice ringing out with a newfound strength. "I may be a ragdoll, Jax, but I have a heart," she declared, her words echoing through the silence of the circus tent. "And unlike you, I refuse to let it be consumed by darkness." And with that, Ragatha turned on her heel and walked away, her steps steady despite the weight of her grief. For even in the face of Jax's cruelty, she knew that she would always find the strength to rise above it, guided by the light of friendship and the power of love. With a heavy heart and a sense of guilt weighing him down, Jax set off in search of Porcey, determined to find his friend and offer her some comfort in her time of need. After what felt like an eternity of wandering through the dimly lit corridors of the digital circus, Jax finally spotted Porcey sitting alone in a dark corner, her shoulders slumped with despair as tears streamed down her face. "Porcey," Jax called out softly, his voice tinged with concern as he approached her. "Are you okay?" Porcey looked up, her eyes red and swollen from crying, but a glimmer of hope flickered in their depths at the sight of her friend. "Jax," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Jax knelt beside her, his heart aching at the sight of her pain. "Hey, it's okay," he murmured, his voice gentle. "None of this is your fault. Pomni wasn't that important anyway. You shouldn't feel guilty." But Porcey shook her head, her tears continuing to flow unchecked. "But she was important to Regatha," she insisted, her voice trembling with sorrow. "And I helped cause her abstraction. I can't stop thinking about what I've done." Jax's patience wore thin as he struggled to comprehend Porcey's remorse. "Come on, Porcey, don't be so melodramatic," he scoffed, his annoyance clear in his voice. "Regatha will get over it, and so should you. I thought you were different." With those words, Jax rose to his feet and stormed off into the darkness, leaving Porcey alone with her thoughts and her guilt. As she watched him disappear into the shadows, Porcey's heart shattered into a million pieces, the weight of her friend's disappointment crushing her spirit. But even in her darkest hour, Porcey knew that she could not let her guilt consume her. With a deep breath, she wiped away her tears and resolved to make things right, determined to find a way to bring light back into the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. As Porcelana, her heart heavy with guilt and remorse, made her way to her parents' room, she found herself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions. The weight of her actions weighed heavily on her shoulders, and she longed for the comfort and reassurance that only her parents could provide. As she entered the room, Gangle and Kinger turned to greet her, their faces reflecting a mixture of surprise and concern at her somber demeanor. "Porcey, darling, what's wrong?" Gangle asked, her voice filled with worry as she approached her daughter. Kinger's floating hands reached out to gently caress Porcelana's shoulder, his eyes filled with concern. "You seem upset, Porcey. Is everything okay?" Porcelana took a deep breath, her eyes welling up with tears as she struggled to find the words to express her feelings. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm sorry for how I've been treating you all this time, and I'm sorry for what happened to Pomni." Gangle and Kinger exchanged a surprised glance, their hearts aching at the sight of their daughter's distress. But instead of turning her away like Jax had done, they opened their arms and pulled Porcelana into a comforting embrace. "Oh, Porcey, sweetheart, it's okay," Gangle murmured, her voice filled with love and compassion. "We know you've been going through a lot lately, but we're here for you, always." Kinger nodded in agreement, his floating hands gently stroking Porcelana's hair. "You don't have to apologize, Porcey," he reassured her, his voice soft and comforting. "We love you, no matter what, and we'll get through this together." As Porcelana melted into her parents' embrace, she felt a sense of warmth and belonging wash over her, the weight of her guilt lifting ever so slightly in the presence of their unwavering love. In that moment, surrounded by the comforting embrace of her parents, Porcelana knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would always find solace and strength in the love of her family. And with their support, she felt a glimmer of hope begin to flicker in the darkness, guiding her toward a brighter future. As the door to Porcey and her parents' room swung open, Jax's presence filled the doorway, his expression a mask of anger and frustration. "Porcey, come on, let's go prank Regatha," Jax demanded, his voice tinged with impatience as he glared at his friend. But Porcey recoiled at the thought, her heart heavy with guilt and remorse. I can't, Jax," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper as tears welled up in her eyes. "Not after what happened to Pomni." Jax's anger flared at Porcey's refusal, his fists clenched in frustration. "What do you mean you can't?" he snapped, his voice laced with disappointment. "We're a team, Porcey. You can't just back out now." But Porcey shook her head, her resolve unwavering despite Jax's anger. "I'm sorry, Jax," she murmured, her voice trembling with sorrow. I just can't do it anymore, not if it means hurting someone else. With that, Porcey turned away from Jax, her heart heavy with the weight of their fractured friendship. She watched as Jax stormed off into the darkness, his footsteps echoing through the empty corridors of the digital circus. As Porcey sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face, she couldn't help but wonder if their friendship was truly over. She had never imagined that standing up for what was right would cost her so much. And now, she found herself adrift in a sea of loneliness and regret. But even as she mourned the loss of her friendship with Jax, Porcey knew that she could not betray her own conscience. And as she sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by the echoes of her own tears, she vowed to stay true to herself, no matter the cost. With tears still staining her cheeks, Porcelana sought solace in the comforting embrace of her parents. Snuggling up between them, she buried her face in the soft fabric of Gangle's robe, seeking refuge from the turmoil of her emotions. As Porcey's sobs gradually subsided, exhaustion washed over her, pulling her into the gentle embrace of sleep. But even as she drifted off into the realm of dreams, her troubled mind refused to find peace. In her nightmare, Jax's angry voice echoed through the darkness, his words laced with bitterness and resentment. "You're weak, Porcey," he taunted, his voice ringing with scorn. "You let everyone down. You're nothing but a disappointment." Porcey's heart clenched with pain at the sound of Jax's cruel words, her body trembling with fear and despair. But no matter how hard she tried to escape, she found herself trapped in the grip of his anger, unable to break free from the torment of her own guilt. As the nightmare continued to unfold, Porcey felt her resolve crumbling beneath the weight of Jax's accusations. But just as she was on the verge of succumbing to the darkness, a warm and familiar voice cut through the chaos like a beacon of light. "Porcelana, my darling," Gangle's voice whispered, her words filled with love and reassurance. "You are strong, my dear. You are loved. And no matter what happens, we will always be here for you." With Gangle's words echoing in her ears, Porcey's fear began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity. And as she drifted back into the realm of sleep, she knew that no matter what nightmares may come, she would always find solace in the love of her parents. As Porcelana jolted awake to the piercing scream, her heart pounding with dread, she knew instinctively that something was terribly wrong. With a sense of urgency, she leaped out of bed and raced towards the source of the chilling sound, her mind racing with fear and apprehension. As she approached Ragatha's room, Porcelana's heart sank at the sight that greeted her. Peeking through the doorway, she watched in horror as Jax unleashed his fury upon Ragatha, his hands wielding a knife with terrifying precision as he tore into her with relentless brutality. Porcelana's breath caught in her throat as she witnessed the carnage unfold before her eyes, the sickening sound of flesh tearing and stuffing flying filling the air as Ragatha's screams echoed through the room. But it was Jax's words that sent a chill down Porcelana's spine, his voice dripping with malice as he blamed Ragatha for her own demise. "You ruined her, Ragatha," Jax spat, his eyes blazing with rage as he plunged the knife into Ragatha's torn fabric once more. "You made her weak, soft. It's your fault she refuses to prank anymore. And now, you'll pay for it." Porcelana's heart pounded with horror as Ragatha's screams gradually dwindled into silence, her lifeless form lying in a pool of stuffing as Jax stood over her, his breath ragged with exertion. But as Porcelana watched in terror, she realized with a sinking feeling that Jax felt no remorse for his actions. His eyes glinted with a twisted sense of satisfaction, his anger unyielding as he surveyed the destruction he had wrought. With a heavy heart, Porcelana knew that she could not let Jax's reign of terror continue unchecked. Gathering her courage, she made a silent vow to confront him and put an end to his rampage once and for all, no matter the cost. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Porcelana summoned every ounce of courage within her and stepped forward to confront Jax, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "Jax, what you did to Ragatha was wrong," she declared, her voice quivering with emotion as she met his gaze head-on. "You can't just hurt people because you're angry. It's not right." Jax's eyes widened in shock at Porcey's words, his anger momentarily overshadowed by disbelief. "You saw?" he whispered, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You saw what I did? But as the reality of his actions sank in, Jax's anger flared once more, his fists clenched in frustration. "You have no right to tell me what to do, Porcey," he spat, his voice filled with resentment. "You don't get to judge me." Desperation flickered in Jax's eyes as he pleaded with Porcey to join forces with him once more, his voice tinged with a hint of longing. "Please, Porcey," he begged, his voice cracking with emotion. "I still want to be friends. We can rule the digital circus together, just like old times." But Porcey shook her head, her resolve unwavering despite Jax's pleas. "I can't, Jax," she whispered, her voice filled with sadness. "Not after what you've done. I can't be a part of this anymore." With a roar of fury, Jax lunged at Porcey, his knife glinting in the dim light as he prepared to strike. But before he could deliver the fatal blow, a sudden movement caught his eye. Porcey's heart stopped as she braced herself for the pain, but it never came. Opening her eyes in disbelief, she saw her father, Kinger, crumpled on the ground with a knife embedded in his chest-piece body. Shock and horror coursed through Porcey as she realized what had happened. Her father, in a selfless act of sacrifice, had thrown himself in harm's way to save her from Jax's wrath. Tears streaming down her face, Porcey knelt beside her father, her hands trembling as she reached out to him. "Dad?" she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "No, why did you—" But Kinger's eyes were already growing dim, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke his final words. I love you, Porcey," he murmured, his voice fading into the darkness. "Always." And with those words, Kinger's form dissolved into pixels, leaving behind only the echo of his love and the weight of his sacrifice. And as Porcey cradled her father's fading essence in her arms, she knew that she would carry his memory with her, always. A beacon of hope in the darkness of the digital circus. With her heart pounding in her chest and tears blurring her vision, Porcelana knew she had no time to mourn her father's death. As Jax lunged at her once more, his eyes blazing with fury, she summoned every ounce of strength within her and dodged his attack with lightning speed. Adrenaline coursing through her veins, Porcelana sprinted away as fast as her legs could carry her, the echoes of Jax's enraged shouts echoing through the empty corridors of the digital circus. But despite her best efforts to escape, Jax was hot on her heels, his footsteps echoing ominously behind her as he pursued her with relentless determination. "You can't run from me, Porcey," Jax roared, his voice filled with anger and betrayal. "You've betrayed me, and now you'll pay for it." Fear gnawed at Porcelana's heart as she darted through the maze-like corridors, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she desperately sought a way to escape from Jax's relentless pursuit. But no matter how fast she ran, she could not shake the feeling of dread that clung to her like a shadow. The memory of her father's sacrifice weighing heavily on her soul as she raced against the darkness that threatened to consume her. With every step, Porcelana knew that she was running out of time. But even as the darkness closed in around her, she refused to give up hope. Her father's love burning bright within her heart as she fought to outrun the chaos that threatened to engulf them all. As Porcelana's frantic footsteps echoed through the empty corridors of the digital circus, her heart hammered in her chest with a mixture of fear and desperation. But just as she felt the darkness closing in around her, a glimmer of hope caught her eye. In the distance, a red exit door beckoned to her like a beacon of salvation, its promise of escape filling her with a surge of renewed determination. With a burst of energy, Porcelana raced towards the door, her pulse pounding in her ears as she reached out to grasp the handle. With trembling hands, she swung the door open, her heart racing with anticipation. But as the door creaked open, Porcelana's hopes were dashed in an instant. Before her lay not an escape route, but a room filled with searing lava, its fiery depths stretching out before her like a bottomless pit of despair. With a sinking feeling in her heart, Porcelana turned to flee, only to find herself face to face with Jax once more, his eyes blazing with fury as he lunged at her with the knife. With lightning reflexes, Porcelana dodged his attack, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched in horror as Jax stumbled and fell through the open door, his screams echoing through the chamber as he plummeted into the fiery depths below. For a moment, Porcelana stood frozen in shock, the weight of her friend's fate heavy on her soul. But as Jax's screams faded into the distance, she knew that she had no choice but to act. With a heavy heart, Porcelana reached out and shut the door, sealing Jax's fate and leaving him to burn in the fiery depths of the lava-filled room. Tears streaming down her face, Porcelana whispered a silent prayer for her fallen friend, her heart heavy with the burden of guilt and sorrow. But even as she mourned his loss, she knew that she had no choice but to carry on, for the sake of her own survival and the memory of those she had lost along the way.